Okay, you can begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Dwayne Tucker, and welcome to the May 29, 24 meeting of the Tennessee State University Board of Trustees. Finance Committee meeting is now called to order. First, I'd like to welcome TSU Cabinet who's participating today, as well as representatives from the Tennessee Higher Education Commission and Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation, as well as the Board of Trustees. Welcome. We need to make certain findings on the record regarding the necessity for conducting today's meeting by electronic participation without a physical quorum present. In accordance with Tennessee Code Anointed, Section 8-44-108B2, as chair of the Finance Committee, I offer the following facts and circumstances in support of the finding necessity for the Finance Committee to conduct its May 29, 24 meeting without the physical presence of a quorum. The committee is scheduled to take up important matters which require timely action by the committee, including but not limited to a Tennessee Higher Education Commission, Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation program review and funding update, an update and discussion about the deferred maintenance plan for the university, and a discussion regarding the university's upcoming 24-25 budget. Participation by electronic means is necessary due to travel issues and the importance of the matters to be discussed related to the committee's responsibility. Accordingly, I move that the committee find that participation by a quorum of the committee members by electronic means of communication is necessary. Is there a second?
Second.
The question is on the motion to find that participation by a quorum of the committee members by electronic means of communications is necessary. Secretary Pendleton, please call the roll.
Trustee Tucker.
Present.
Trustee Norfleet.
Present.
Trustee Trober.
Present.
We have 3 yeses.
The motion carries. We will proceed with the meeting without the physical presence of a quorum. At this time, we need to call the roll. Committee members, if you cannot hear or speak to the other committee members, please say so as your name is called for roll. For each committee member participating electronically, please also identify any individuals who are present in the location from which you are. Secretary Pendleton, please call the roll.
Trustee Tucker.
Present.
Trustee Norfleet.
Present.
Trustee Trober.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The agenda for the day calls for a review of the funding update, and I've asked Doug, our CFO, to provide an update as well as a timeline around the items that were identified to be corrected. And at this time, in addition to that, we've also asked for a deferred maintenance update in terms of a timeline being provided, as well as areas in which the university has identified $250 million to, in effect, address the deferred maintenance issues. And then from there, we're going to spend a little time with our CFO discussing the current budget, as well as the preliminary budget for 24-25. I also asked each one of the participants to prepare an executive summary in advance of the meeting, along with a timeline, so that we could at least get everybody on the same page in terms of timing and what has expired since some of these initiatives have taken place. And I also look forward to, after Doug finishes up his update on the funding update, to hear any comments that I guess from the Tennessee Higher Education Commission and the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation want to have in terms of feedback on the performance that we're addressing these outstanding items. So with that, if there's any other additional questions, I'm going to turn it over to Doug.
So, Chair Tucker, before we get started, may I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
And that is, we want to say on behalf of TSU, how much we appreciate the fact that we're engaged in this conversation about the TSAC review. And we really appreciate the fact that TSAC is working so diligently with TSU to make sure that all the findings and observations are handled correctly, that we chart the right path forward for the future reviews. So having said that, I just want to get on the record so that now Doug was okay. Now we're turning with Doug. Thank
No,
you.
well, thank you for that. And I think there were 24 items that were identified that need to be remediated as part of those findings so that the funding could take place. So with that, I wanted Doug to just bring everybody up to speed on what actions have been taken to address those items, because quite a few of them have been remediated. And there's a few outstanding that we should spend most of our time on, is my recommendation today, in terms of what's the plan, is it credible, and what support and resources are needed to ensure that we complete those outstanding items by the middle of June. So go ahead, Doug.
All right. Madam President, thank you. Chairman Tucker, thank you as well. And I'm glad to see our members with TSAC on the call as well. I know that they'll be providing some information also. In your materials, you were provided the TSAC executive summary, which outlines the compliance review timeline. As Chairman Tucker stated, there were 24 deficiencies noted during the compliance review that was conducted by the TSAC staff, led by Ms. Leah Llewellyn. I just want to speak briefly to the timeline. We can let's see, who is Sterling? Can you go to the compliance review timeline and pull that up? I know each board member has it in their packet. And I'm going to share my screen shortly. Not that one, that's the wrong one. That's okay, take that down. Just take that down. Sterling, you can take that one down. Thank you. Again, the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation has a statutory responsibility to review and evaluate the administration of each financial assistance program at participating post-secondary institutions to ensure the programs are administered according to applicable laws, rules, and regulations. Pursuant to this responsibility, from July the 10th through the 13th of 2023, they conducted a program compliance review of Tennessee State University's financial aid programs for the fiscal period or academic year 2022-2023. Can someone mute there, please? Okay, thank you. The TSAC compliance team reviewed a random sample of student records of the institution's financial aid recipients. The compliance review again noted 24 deficiencies. When the report was issued, we as TSU staff and administration could put together a task force to address these 24 items. We began on October the 11th. That was our first initial meeting. We had various meetings throughout October, November, and December. We provided to the TSAC team on December the 20th a list of responses for the items that were noted in the report. This was right before the winter break. The students are out. TSAC's team reviewed the information over the break there. Once we came back, they provided their update on January the 12th. We, at that time, looked at their responses and reconvened the team to assist and make sure that we could follow up and answer the said questions in the review. Leah Llewellyn and her team, they recommended a training that TSU staff to join. We had the training actually on campus. It was a good training. I did attend myself, and it provided that additional, just some additional assurances that we need here based on the expertise that THEC or TSAC staff provided to us. We fast forward to today, and I want to thank Kristen Ogletree. She is the senior lead on our engagement. And as of today, being 5/29/2024, I'm going to share my screen for just a second. Can everyone see my screen? All right, excellent, excellent. Again, thank you, Kristen, for providing the information to get us as to exactly where we are as of today. When this information was provided to the board, and I'm going to go to the bottom here, the items in gray, there were 15 or 24 deficiencies that were completed and signed off by TSAC. As of today, they were able to complete and close out one more. That gives us 16 of 24 of the deficiencies signed off by TSAC. There were 3 of 24 items that were currently in review. Those items are in the bluish color that you see here, that being item number 11, 13, and 16. Kristen did provide additional information today, so I have the team looking at this, looking at the information now and providing that additional, the additional responses needed. So we are now again at 2 of 24 of the items that are currently being reviewed by TSAC. And again, Kristen, thank you for providing that information. There were 3 items that were submitted on 5/23 of 24. That's in the peach color that you see here. That was items 14, items 15, and items 23. The TSAC team actually reviewed these items as well. So we do have their feedback for those 6 items. Where I want to spend some time is on item number 7, item number 17, and item number 24. Item number 7 is the incorrect TELS, GPA, and benchmark calculations. This is currently in process. Where we stand as of today, this is, we had received a report indicated a P grade for dual enrollment students. The D is for dual enrollment students that were excluded. However, we found the students where it did not accurately report the data. So what I've asked is for our IT group to go back, and they're actually compiling that report for us. We will then resubmit that to the TSAC folks for their review and feedback on that one. So that's item, and that's a warning number 7. Finding number 17, which is the failure to verify coursework program of studies, or CPAS. This is an ongoing item, and I will speak to this. The academic year under review was for 22-23. However, when meeting with the TSAC team, it made more sense for us to go ahead and start with the certification process, or get into the certification process with the 23-24 academic year, because those are the funds that we would ultimately be requesting from TSAC. Okay. So the 22-23 academic year is the year under review. But again, for operating purposes in this fiscal year, we moved forward with that. Now, the team is still working through the 22-23 CPAS data as well. And item number 24. Item 24 was failure to properly manage and maintain student account balances. One of the problems or one of the concerns that we had here was the system and how it was actually, this is kind of behind the scenes in Banner. We did hire a consultant to help us with the what's called fee assessment tables to ensure that we are charging students the correct amount. There was one item within a screen in Banner that we have since corrected. So that will allow going forward. But again, we're needing to make sure that all fees and charges assessed to students are appropriate and accurate in accordance with our fee schedule. So again, as of 5/29, this is where the university stands. I do want to say both parties have been working very hard on this. We do appreciate the assistance. I do want to say thank you to Dr. Gentile for providing his staff to actually come on site to assist us as well. So we looked at this as a collaborative approach. And as you all can see, we are able to close these items out. June 15th is where we're looking to be able to close these items out. Now, with that being said, there are items that will continue for that, particularly related to the CPOS area and the student and item number or finding number 24 that relates to the maintenance of the accounts. Again, we did hire a consultant, Banner Lucian expert, to assist us in this. They actually started the testing on 5/28, and it does appear right now that we are on track to complete that by 6/15 of next month. So that's where we are, Chairman Tucker, as it relates to the TSAC executive summary and review. I do want to state also, as it relates to funding, we have to, as an institution, we have to provide the files to TSAC through the FAST system. Once they review and approve and certify, that's when funds are released. So I know there was conversations about TSAC holding funds, etc. Again, it's our responsibility to provide the data to then have the funds released. Though we haven't completed all 24, TSAC is releasing the funds as they become certified. So again, we have hands on deck to make sure that we get through the remaining students and their files to get proper sign off. TSAC also provided a engagement letter. They will be back on site in July, and I think that's going to kind of run into they're going to be on site next week. And that might be for a couple of weeks, and I'm not sure how that was going to transition into the compliance review for FY 23-24. But again, we welcome them on campus. We have provided them full access to our system. So I think things are moving in the right direction. So again, Chairman Tucker, we will entertain questions at this time.
Before we take questions and move forward with, I guess on the math of the 24 findings and 15 have been agreed to, that they've been resolved.
Yes, sir.
That leaves 9. So
right.
To be clear on the 9 that's left, what degree of confidence that you have that all of those will be completed and remediated by the middle of June?
Sure. So Chairman Tucker, we actually have, as of today, TSAC was able to sign off on one more. So we're now at 16 of 24. I feel confident that we can get there. As I stated, there will be, I think, just to the nature and complexity of the CPOS, that's a work in process as I see that, and really making sure that our student accounts are updated and reflect the appropriate charges outside of those two. And I know that there are continuous efforts to receive official transcripts from students. But I feel good as where we are. I think we will be substantially complete, given that fact. And if not, we'll then notify the board of that. So I can see some ongoing as it relates to those three items, but I do feel that we are definitely in the right direction.
So in terms of resources, are there additional resources that you need beyond just the support that you're getting from the Tennessee Higher Education Commission and the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation that can help give more support to completing these in a timely manner?
Yes, sir. Actually, our associate vice president for financial aid and the director of financial aid, uh, they've both been working very tediously on this process. One thing that Leah and I spoke about was additional training for our internal staff. So that is one thing that's on the horizon to do that. But right now, it's a process that it is time consuming. There are some complexities to it. However, we do have individuals within the Department of Financial Aid that also are assisting in this process to get us where we need to be.
Chairman Tucker, may I add to that? I'm glad you asked about the resources because we have been in contact, we've been in discussions. Well, first we put together a team to go through everything and to make sure we stay on top of it and make corrections and submit them in a timely manner. But secondly, this Trustee Dr. Allen and I talked about setting two individuals who are already in financial aid to add, increasing their responsibilities to include TSAC certifications, so there would be such a limited number of individuals with the certification knowledge and how to get through that process. So that's what we're working on now, making sure that we just committed to get this audit done. And so all these corrections done. So we're making sure we get those two individuals. We believe that those two plus the committee continuing to work on it will be enough to push us over the line.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a boarding call for all passengers on American Airlines Flight 20.
Somebody should make sure they make the flight.
Yeah.
Before I suggest an order of questions for the recent presentation. Let's start with the Finance Committee members. Do you have any questions from the presentation we just received?
I do have a quick question, and it goes to the finding related to CPOS. I'm just curious what processes are in order, or what steps are you taking to make sure, because I heard you say this is an ongoing issue. So is this going to be repetitive for the future semesters? And what are you doing to be proactive to not come down this same road again?
Trustee Norfleet, that's a good question. I appreciate you asking. During this process, this is not just to fix things in the short term, just to satisfy the 22-23 compliance review. These are changes that are being put in place to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Okay, and I want to be very clear on that. And these are some of the discussions that we had with the TSAC staff. And that's part of the reason why they're here. It's an extensive review that they complete. But at the same token, we are fixing these items as we see them, so we don't have to repeat them.
Thank you.
The current financial impact of this is, and then also if the remaining findings are not cured on June 15th, what the continuing financial impact would be after June 15th.
Sure. And again, thank you for your question, Trustee Trevor. From a finance, if every student is certified, okay, that having all supporting documentation, transcripts, etc., it's about $10 million on an annual basis. Okay, so that's 10 million operating dollars. Our goal is to, of course, get every single student in and get them certified for the remaining couple of weeks that we have to complete this review. It does have financial implications if we do not. And I can't give you an exact number, but it could range just depending on per student, it could be $7,500 to $8,000 in lost revenues per student, because there's more than one source of funding that's tied to this. So if I'm an in-state student and I qualify for all funding and the maximum funding, then that is beneficial. I'm sorry, that is critical uh, to our operations. Period. So I really think that our goal is to put the resources, put the folks in here again, work closely with TSAC. They're actually on staff. I'm sorry, on site with us. So they're like staff here, working through the findings as well. So yes, to answer your question, it does have a financial implication, but our goal is to again get every student properly certified.
Hey, Doug, quick
Yes, sir.
question. I come from the school of understanding that says that in every problem, there needs to be a root cause analysis done to ensure that we have solved all of the issues around the individual issues that you've had. Can we say that we have a structured process that gives us a root cause analysis that helps us to get to a learning process that allows us not to make the mistakes that we've made before?
Yes, Trustee Williams, thank you. And I would say absolutely yes to that. The root cause, if at the end of the day, the root cause was identified by the compliance review set forth by TSAC. Okay. Now, this took a collaboration of departments across the university. This impacts, to name a few, financial aid, bursar, enrollment services, academic affairs. So there are numerous teams that again, we came together, compiled a task force to address each one of these items, Trustee Williams. And I think that's important. So as we've addressed these, so example, if you see one that's been reviewed and signed off by TSAC, we should not see that going forward as a finding, observation, or a warning in the next report. Okay, so yes, we put the controls in place, we put the policies and procedures in place based on the outcome of the report. So I'm comfortable saying. Now, I'm not saying that every single finding may come off the board, because I can't say that at 100%. But what I can say is that we've put the necessary controls in place to make sure that this does not happen again.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
and let me just make sure from the Finance Committee, before we take any additional more questions from fellow trustees. Charles or Jeffrey, do you have any other follow-up questions for Doug?
Well, Justin, maybe not for Doug. I don't know if this is what you were gonna say, Dwayne, but if there are members from THEC on the call that have been involved in this situation, it may be helpful just to hear from them.
Yeah, the plan is to go to them next.
Okay, all right.
I just wanted to see on Doug's presentation, any of the trustees present that would like to ask a question on his presentation before we go to TIAC. Any other trustees beyond the Finance Committee? If not, let me welcome our guest from TIAC, and we'd like to get your update. And well, first we'd like to get your confirmation that the items that we believe have been remediated have been actually completed, and any concerns or direction you'd like to give us in terms of the outstanding items.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Trustee Tucker. If you don't mind, I do have a brief presentation that we've prepared. Are you guys at a point where we can share that with you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And while you pull that up, thanks again for providing some extra resources to help the team at TSU close the gap on some of these items. Still got work to do.
Absolutely. We are happy to help, and we are excited to be on campus. Most of us come from a campus, so the campus is an exciting place to be. Okay, can you guys see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you'll give me 1 second. Good afternoon, trustees. I really do appreciate the opportunity to present to you this afternoon. My name is Leah Llewellyn. I am the Director of Compliance. I do have with me Kristen Ogletree. She was mentioned by Dr. Allen, and she is a key resource in what we're doing at TSU. I also have Peter Abernathy. He is our staff attorney, and he is the Bureau Chief for our Grants and Scholarships Division. I am, just to verify, can you guys see this okay? It is full screen on my side. I just want to make sure you guys can see it.
Are you able to change the presentation view for us, because we're able to see like the working view and not the presentation view?
Yeah, let me do that for you. And I actually, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble every time I move, every time I toggle one of the items, I am moving again. That's very interesting that it's showing that view. It's all checked accurately. I tell you what, I can do.
If you can go in, when you go in the slideshow, and then from the beginning, when you reshare, make sure to select the PowerPoint slideshow rather than the screen.
Okay, I thought that's what I just did. Try again. Sorry, guys. I apologize for the delay. We actually tested this. Sorry, we are having some technical difficulties on our end, and my mouse is not working right this second. So I am toggling to you guys as quickly as I can. I don't want to waste too much of your time. I actually have it in a PDF, which will be helpful as well. So let me pull it up in that version and see if you can see that. I apologize for the delay in this. And Victoria, I did see that you were on. I just sent it to you as well. So if you can email that to Mr. Pendleton, he will have that as well.
Feel free to go ahead and.
Okay, yeah, we will go ahead. I apologize. We will go ahead and get started. I'm not sure what's going on our end technically, but leave it to us to run through that. So I'm going to run through this a little quickly because I saw your agenda, and I respect that you guys have a ton going on today on your agenda. One thing that I want to do is just briefly talk about what happens in a program review, and then also talk about a little bit of the timeline, but where we are financially with TSU. So TSAC is statutorily obligated to perform program reviews at all institutions who participate in state grant or scholarships. Currently, we administer over $500 million in state financial aid programs, and we are reviewing 100 schools across the state. On July 1st, 2022, we did change our methodology and how reviews are conducted. That basically broadened the scope of and the sample sizes were expanded to provide greater protection of state funds. And it also ensures that the laws and regulations are applied fairly and uniformly to all schools and students in Tennessee. So in other words, our team ensures each eligible student receives the right funding at the right time. And so what happens is every third academic year, we have those 100 schools split up into thirds, and every third academic year, those schools receive a program review. It's regularly scheduled. They last about 1 week. After that review, we schedule an exit meeting on campus or virtually to discuss with institutional staff all the discrepancies that we discovered. And then this institution has 30 days following that exit meeting to respond to those discrepancies and indicate to us if they've resolved them since we've been on campus. To give you guys a timeline, I want to kind of breeze through this because Dr. Allen did mention some of these. So we were on campus July 10th through 13th of 2023. That was a regularly scheduled review. At the close of that review, we did determine that it would be necessary to come back another week and expand our sample of students. We did that the week of July 24th through 28th. And then we did provide all of our discoveries to TSU staff on campus on October 11th. As you've mentioned, that did include 24 discrepancies, including 2 observations, 8 warnings, and 14 findings. At that time, we did give all the attendees a copy of that full report, and Dr. Glover received an email that did summarize those items. We didn't provide all of that via email. We extended the deadline. We talked about the 30 days at the beginning. TSU in that meeting asked for an extension. That's very common, and we granted that extension. So their deadline to respond was December 10th of 23. We did receive their response on December 20th. And on January 12th, as he indicated, we were able to respond to TSU and indicate we had gone over each item that they provided to us. February 9th, so on that January date, we started sending weekly emails. We just felt like TSU to keep them in the loop each week to let them know where we were with the statuses of each item. On February 9th, our team sort of put their heads together, and Kristen created a spreadsheet of all 24 findings, observations, warnings, and we created a cumulative list. So every week TSU receives that Excel spreadsheet, and I think you guys saw a little version of that, to tell TSU what is needed to complete that item. And we were excited on May 7th. We went into a 3-month agreement. MOU was signed between TSAC and TSU. Honestly, this allows our staff to go and work directly on campus with the key stakeholders to resolve all of the outstanding program review issues at a foundational level. I heard you guys mention that earlier, and that's one thing that's important for us, is that we assist TSU in correcting things foundationally and not just correcting a student-by-student issue that could make that issue occur again. We do anticipate that we may need to extend that 3-month MOU agreement, and we have prepared our staff to do so up to 12 months. So to let you guys know, we have sort of cleared our calendars and are prepared to extend that up to 12 months. Dr. Allen did mention we have 16 of the 24 items complete. We consider the item complete. That means TSU has submitted the information we've requested, we've reviewed it, and to our best of our ability that we've closed those items for TSU. When you do receive my slides, and I apologize that we're having those technical issues, there will be 3 slides that briefly go over the warning and several findings that are outstanding, and it just gives you the high-level information of what's needed to complete those. So if you are interested in that, that will be delivered in the slides to you. The last thing I really wanted to talk about with you guys is the certification process that was mentioned. So for state financial aid programs, schools are required to complete this process that we call certification in our data system. It's essentially an invoice that tells TSAC what students are enrolled at TSU and what specific award amounts for what specific programs they will be requesting. And so we have to have that invoice to know how much money to request. On May 22nd, Dr. Allen mentioned that our executive director, Dr. Stephen Gentile, did authorize the release of grant and scholarship payments. They had certified at that point $1.1 million, just over that. We did request those funds from the Department of Finance and Administration. It does take, because of the large amount, about 10 days to be delivered to the institution. Beyond May 22nd, TSU has certified $2,152 in dual enrollment grant funds. Those funds were the only funds that have been certified since last week. And so if we were to pay today, they would receive $2,152. To give you guys an idea of how much money I anticipate TSU will be certifying in our system, I see that, I believe I saw Dr. CA's name sharing my slide. Thank you, Dr. CA. She is my good friend that I have met at TSU. So thank you for doing that. So the last bullet is super important. So we believe that TSU will certify an additional just over $5.7 million based on what has been offered to students in their banner system. At this date, we don't really expect to see that increase significantly just because it is at the end of the academic year. It may increase slightly. So if you want to look at total paid for the academic year in state grants and scholarships, you would add the 5.7 million to the 1.1 million we've already paid. So we do expect that TSU will be certifying that 5.7 million in the next little bit. We've talked a lot about June 15th. That June 15th date is super important. Those certifications have to be submitted by June 15th in order for TSU to receive payment. Dr. Allen mentioned that we are on campus next week, and so we will be meeting with TSU staff and talking about sort of next planning. We want to make sure that we are providing all the resources we can with the staff that we have. And I think that we made some good progress during our last visit, and it's easier for us to talk to folks when we're on campus, just frankly. So I appreciate TSU going into that agreement with us, and we're excited to be on campus next week. Again, I apologize that you did not see all of my presentation. I will be happy to share that out with you guys. Most of it, I do believe Dr. Allen had been over, but I am happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Just one quick question. Thank you for the presentation. One quick question on the last slide. Can you bring it back up again? I want to make sure I'm following the math correctly, because our CFO was speaking to a number between 8 and 10. So if you add the 5.7 with the 1,000,001, then you got, the only way you get to that number, the higher number, is you count the ones that have already been certified since May 22. Is that correct? The way to look at that, or?
So the 1.1 million is what they've already certified and paid. And if you add that to the 5.7 million, which is what's outstanding in their system. Now, again, that could grow, I would think, in small amounts. I would not expect that to grow in large amounts. Last year, I do believe, and I don't have those numbers at my fingertips, but last time I looked, TSU was paid right at 9 million last year in state grant and scholarship funds. I did anticipate that would go down, as we all know. I mean, enrollment's down at most institutions, right? So that ebbs and flows with the certifications depending on enrollment. So I would expect the number to go down some this year, but you are correct that you're looking at really 6.8 million from what we can see.
Right. Okay, and the next question would be, and then I'll turn it over to the rest of the Finance Committee, is relative to your degree of confidence around the outstanding items that need to be corrected prior to the middle of June. Are there any of those in that group that you are very concerned about?
I think it's very possible to close some of the items by the middle of June. I will be honest, there are 2 items that are more complex. And I think that will take work beyond June 15th. I think that there are other items that have very small issues remaining, and we can move past that. But there are 2 items that I think may be a little more challenging.
And from your view, what are those 2?
So the first is Dr. Allen mentioned the coursework for program of study. He actually mentioned both of these. their data system can do this, and it's just a matter of us getting all the players together. Financial aid is a little bit of a unique bear in that it touches every office, right? It touches admissions, records, bursar. We gets in the business of professors and how they report attendance. So it's very unique. But I think CPOS is going to be probably one of the more complex issues to resolve, as well as the final finding, which is 24, which Dr. Allen also mentioned, the account balances. I think that is probably going to be the most difficult item to correct.
Okay. Jeffrey, any questions?
You asked two of the ones that I was wondering myself, but I do have a question. Typically, how many MOUs are needed to help a campus through these to resolve findings? Is that often? Do you see that a lot? Could you give me some context around that, please?
Absolutely. Trustee Norfleet, this is a little bit new territory for us. So since we changed our methodology July 1st of 2022, this was one of the important things to us is to set up, we actually hired 2 folks that this is all they do if they go onto campuses to help them. We've only been at one other campus, so I don't feel like I have a lot of data. We did one MOU with them. And I think it's important to know that, we are here for the long haul. We want to make sure that we can help resolve these, but I have only had one other school experience this.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Charles?
Trying to figure out the best way to ask this question, because you mentioned something to the effect that part of what you do is not necessarily just to fix the issue, but kind of lay a foundation so the issues don't persist or arise again. So of the matters that have been resolved, what's your confidence level that these things are fixed for the long term and not just for the short term?
Thank you, Trustee Trauber. That's a great question. So I'll be honest with you, some of that we will learn when we are back on campus in July. We will know if the items are fixed permanently. And that's something that I'm happy to report back after our team. So we are on campus now, but we're sort of in the thick of things. But what we will be reviewing in July is the 23-24 academic year. So we will be able to see clearly if items were truly resolved. For example, one of the things that we ask for when we find something that we feel like needs a new type of policy or procedure to ensure future occurrence is not a thing. So we've received those policies and procedures. So when we go back on campus, we will, in July with the full team, we'll be making sure that those policies and practices were actually put into place.
Those things now, I don't know if this is a question for Doug or President Glover. So are those things now that the university is anticipating and looking at, and do you have policies and procedures in place and ways to control those policies and procedures to make sure that they're implemented correctly so this doesn't happen again?
You want me to take that, President?
Okay, and I'll follow up.
Okay, yeah, sure. Trustee Trauber, yes. And again, as I stated earlier, it's one of those things where as we're going through this, we're documenting where the issues took place. And in some cases, it may be creating a whole new policy, right? In some cases, it's where we've had to revise a policy or put additional procedures inside of that policy. That's an ongoing. So when you go from technically 0 deficiencies to then 24, and as Leah stated, this was a new process or more complex procedures that they're doing. It lends itself to additional, scrutiny from the standpoint. These are designed to make us better. I don't believe it's designed to say, oh, we found this. No, this is what they found, and this is immediately what we began to address. Okay, so as the CFO, I would like to see all 24 of these go away in the next compliance review. But I also stated that, it takes time. There will be some that may be repeated, but it's not because, and part of that could be timing and they're coming right back. So you have to keep that in mind as well in July for the 23-24. But I feel comfortable that we're putting procedures in place, and that is not just in finance, but that is across all departments and areas that are touched by this compliance review.
Right. And I follow up, thank you, Trustee Trombley. I will say that this audit, when I talked to Dr. Stephen Gentile, we both agree this audit is a good thing for TSU because in the past, it has not been a comprehensive audit like this. It's been a very different review that was not inclusive of a lot of the items we're finding now. These types of audit make the university better. And so I think it was a good thing to have that expanded approach, having been an auditor, to have an expanded approach to how we're doing things. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the first day she told we were the first school in this new approach. And so we take that and say, well, look, tell us what we need to do to make us better, and then to do it perfectly. And so what we're doing now, we're going through training of employees. Doug and I are going through looking at who's better fit for the right position. We'll have that done in the next few days. We're working at that, just see how we can make this work better for each one of us. And so I'm looking at this testing also, testing it to see if we've really corrected. The ones that can be tested, just doing a test of it to see if things are corrected or if it was just a Band-Aid. We don't see in a Band-Aid approach, but we don't know until we get into the next year. We don't know fully. We have a good idea, and we have a level of confidence, but I believe in testing and retesting until we get it corrected. So that's where we are, and I feel more comfortable than I did the first part of the year, but we're not there yet, but we're getting there.
Okay. Before we go to Charles, you have something else? Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Chairman Tucker. I would like to state that this type of complex review, it lends itself to looking at every single student. Okay, so though TSAC performs a sample selection of students, right? So within that population, they saw issues, so they came back and selected an additional sample. From our side of the house, it requires us to look at every single student. Okay. And so, though this process has been several months ongoing, it's definitely, again, been one where we've taken it very seriously, but also recognizing where some of those gaps are in our processes and being able to fix those. But when you're talking about thousands of students, it does take time, and the folks have been working extended hours to make sure that we are fully compliant going forward.
Before we take any additional questions from other trustees, I'd just like to make a couple of statements to our partners at TCAP. And that is, going forward, part of the conversations that the Finance Committee is having with the university is that it comes down to, a couple of words. One, transparency, and two, accountability. So I heard you say a couple of times, honestly, you should feel free going forward when we have these meetings that you tell us what we need to know. And we're open to that. And the accountability should reside with the university. And that's part of our job as the Finance Committee to ensure that the university is accountable. So always feel free to be honest about anything that you think we should know. And that we are going to plan another update at an upcoming board meeting on where we are on these outstanding items. With that, so thank you for your partnership with TCAP. We appreciate the resources and additional help. Are there any other questions? I see one from Madam Chair, looks like. And Cap, we're going to go with ladies first. Go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you all for the time today. I just have a quick clarification question in regards to the additional $5.7 million and the findings that you noted. So the 5.7 is assuming that the university is able to certify this additional amounts, and that's for 2023. My question is, if we do not get these findings addressed, what happens for 2024 and this upcoming semester?
Trustee Winton, thank you for that question. I think that is a great question and one we should chat about. So Dr. Gentile sent a letter to Dr. Glover indicating the release of those funds, that 1.1 million, regardless of the audit status or the program review status, knowing that we are still in working with TSU and working through those items, as will be the additional 5+ million when those items are certified. If we move into the 24-25 academic year and there is no resolution to all 24 items, those funds will be held until we have resolution. And that's part of our work on campus. We hope that we can continue to help TSU move the needle on those outstanding items to ensure they are accurate for 24-25. And again, we'll have a very good view of that once we go back with the entire team in July.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Yeah, for me, I live in this world where if you don't have standard common processes, then you can expect mistakes. And so at some point in time, we have to talk about what that looks like, maybe across the spectrum. But if you can't standardize the work and drive common processes, you'll be chasing your tail all the time. So that's where I think we have to live in this world that says we know the process, we know and expect that we're going to run that process, and that process should generate for us the credibility or the reliability of making those systems work on a long-term perspective. Standard work lives in every manufacturing environment, in every other environment, and we have to drive it into this environment if we're going to be successful long-term. So that's my belief. I think we got to go spend a little bit of time on what that really looks like.
I agree 100%. And I think we owe it to the larger board to have a presentation around those new processes that we put in or have put into place, including some additional software that's been acquired to make it easier. And I do see another handout, Ms. Chapman, trustee.
Thank you, Chairman Tucker. This is just for a point of clarity. I have two questions. And this is for our friends at TSEC. So 2024, if 2023 is not fixed, 2024 will also be held. What is that additional potential financial implication? Is that the $10 million that Mr. Allen was talking about earlier?
So I'm not sure the 10 million, it will depend on the enrollment of students and those eligible students. So I really don't have the dollar amount yet. We do have, as you guys might have heard, that the 24-25 FAFSA process has been very interesting at every institution in this nation. That process was changed drastically at the federal level in the last year. And so we recently did load all of those student FAFSAs and have communicated eligible students to institutions. But that number will likely fluctuate quite a bit between now and August when we're starting school. So I don't have that dollar amount, but at probably by the next meeting, we may be by the July meeting, we may be a little closer to that estimated dollar amount of what could be drawn down.
Okay. Thank you. And as my second part to that question was, again, going back to the 10 million. And again, this is for clarity. Were we assuming that we were going to receive $10 million and it ended up being 6?
May I speak to that?
Yes, please.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Trustee Chapman. So again, as Liz stated earlier, and I said this as well, she said 9 million was the prior year number. Okay. Now, I said anywhere it could be $8 to $10 million. 1.1 million, roughly 1.2 million, is currently certified to be released. And again, uh, that puts us right at a little over $7 million. That doesn't necessarily take into account that I was saying if all students were properly certified, right? Yes, enrollment was down a bit, but not to the point where it would make millions of dollars difference in the state aid. If every student was or can be certified, it may squeak out another $1 million or so, right? Get us around $8 or $9 million. So, I used an estimate again, kind of just based on the prior year, but keeping in mind that if we can certify all, then I think, yes, we have an opportunity to recognize more.
I think, did that answer all your questions, Trustee Chapman?
Yeah, I just wanted to make certain that we were sharing the right number. It sounds like we should be more focusing in on 7 to 8, versus the 10, because I don't
Right.
know if when we transition and talk about more about budgeting, if you're building budgets around the wrong estimate, knowing that enrollment is fluctuating. So that was just a point of clarity, and you answered my question. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Trustee Caesar?
Yes, Siegler. Thank you. So my question is to TSAC. So if these standards are not fixed, or if these deficiencies are not fixed, there's a review period every third year. Is that correct? So if these are not fixed, when is the next review period, that's going to come with the same standards?
Great question. So the typical review is every 3 years. For institutions that have some additional discoveries, we do go back each year. And so that will be our visit in July. With the team is that we will go back and do an annual review. And so depending on the discoveries during the July review of the 23-24 academic year, we will determine if it is necessary for us to return the following July. So it is potential to have that
for institutions that have findings, your review could be an annual review rather than a review every 3 years.
Correct. It's based on what we discover while we're on campus. And so it's not schools that just have a finding, but it depends on the depth of the issues if we feel like we need to come back and review those records again the following year.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions in case I missed any hands? I do think it's worthwhile. Hey, Doug, can you just spend 30 seconds on, while we're waiting on the final funding to come through, how you're accounting for the fact that students are not being impacted by this? So in other words, where's the money coming from? I think it's coming from the reserve, but can you give us 30 seconds on that?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's most important, and thank you, Trustee Tucker. We're here to educate our students. And at the end of the day, the students are not being impacted by the process. And I will say that we have worked through the process to ensure that any student that had an improper charge was held harmless during this process. So there was no negative impact to any student as we've gone through this. We also returned some funds that needed to be returned to TSAC as well. So I think, we pulled, in order to make this happen, we pulled funds, operational funds, to make sure that this happened, knowing that we would be able to reimburse those operational funds. But I want to be clear, this is a decent amount of operational dollars. And it is our responsibility to ensure that we do have the policies and procedures in place, again, so that we don't run against this going forward. I know there's been some good questions. There's questions around the final number. I did double back right quick and just had a chance to look in the system. It was actually it was close to 10 million that was actually that we received in 22-23. Okay, so there'll be some variations, nothing that's going to be material from that standpoint. But as I stated earlier, I want to make sure that we certify, one, to be in compliance, and two, to oversee the operational functions of this university. Thank you, Trustee Tucker.
I think at some point down the road, we ought to, as a board, talk a little bit about what situations allow us, what signature and what sign off has to take place for tapping into the reserves, and how does that money potentially go back? But I just want to make sure everybody was aware where the money was coming from. Any last questions before we allow our guests to leave and move into the deferred maintenance update and discussion?
So just to confirm, because I don't know that I heard Doug answer this. So the money is coming from the reserves? I mean, it sounds like, Dwayne, that's your understanding. That would be my understanding, but I don't know that I got the confirmation from Doug saying that.
So we have auxiliary funds that are set aside. So yes, we've pulled funds from auxiliary in order to satisfy the current obligations of the university.
Charles, did you answer? Charles, did you answer?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to thank representatives from TIAC for joining us today, and we will engage you at our next meeting to get an update of where we are in terms of resolving all the outstanding items. And hopefully we look forward to having that concluded prior to that meeting. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. All right. At the next agenda item that we had was on deferred maintenance. And there's been a lot of information out about the deferred maintenance and whether or not it required a update to the master plan or to rewrite the master plan, and probably a little bit in between. And there's been a lot of cooks in the kitchen on this one, but I think directionally, if the 250 million was originally allocated to support deferred maintenance, it should be worthwhile that we go through those items on there that make up the 250 million in deferred maintenance that the university has identified. With that, there's an expert that's in charge of that, Will, I met for the first time, and he's going to walk us through what ties to the enhancements that equal 250 million in deferred maintenance, as well as one thing that was surprising to me, that some pieces that have already been approved, and I think it's worthwhile for the finance committee and the full board to understand what has been approved and what's outstanding. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Will.
Well, good evening at this point. My name is Will Radford. I am in the operations conference room with my colleague Fabian Jolivet. So the both of us will present information to you that clarifies the present position on deferred maintenance. If you allow me, I want to share my screen. I'd like to just make a brief introduction about who I am. My name is Will Radford. I currently serve as Assistant Vice President for Planning, Design, and Construction, as well as Campus Operations. I am a TSU Architectural Engineering graduate. I'm a former field developer with international partnership in the military privatization space. So I have an extensive background in public-private partnerships, primarily with the Army, Navy, and Air Force. Most recently with Metro Nashville Airport and the new hotel that was constructed there. I want to present to you today a series of documents that will clarify our present position. Thank you for your patience. And bear with me just briefly. I want to get these up. All right. All right, I'd like to start with this timeline. Can everyone see this? Thank you. I got it.
Yes.
All right, excellent. So this timeline captures the deferred maintenance and the associated $250 million as it goes back to January 2022. For clarification, I started at Tennessee State University on March of 2023. Prior to me starting here, the $250 million was announced in 22. After that, the next step was THEC put together a list of projects. Inclusive in that list of projects was a requirement for a new master plan. In March of 2022, the Board of Regents and TSU administration contracted with Wolpert, but there was a specific shift there from not a new master plan to a master plan update. That project took place, and from spring to fall, several projects were approved. I'm not going to read the slide to you, but I invite you to review the items that were approved between spring when the funds were activated and the following year in terms of January 23. So 2 SBC projects were approved, one for the master plan, one for Davis Humanities. It's important to know that those projects are already underway, already under contract. January of the following year, there was an announcement made about the $250 million. Previous meeting, I heard several people refer to that. That is not the present plan. In March of last year, Tennessee Board of Regents contracted with Wolpert. And then between spring of 23 and fall of 23, 4 other projects were presented to the State Building Commission for approval at TSU, and all 4 of those projects were approved between April and November. In November, an electrical project was presented, and it was not approved. It was not taken forward to the SBC, and that is when the shift to begin to look at completing the entire plan and not using the funds in pieces. So in April of this year, TSU, TBR, and the Tennessee Higher Education Commission met and reviewed the existing plan that you will see today. Some of the process that led us to this plan, and this is in concert with Wolpert, if you can see that, but the assessment methodology went through a data gathering period where Wolpert, who is the consultant, and TSU staff members, that being our campus operations team, our maintenance techs, our campus engineer, our campus electrician, went through these buildings. Those buildings and the history from the individuals was gathered by the consultant. They put together a cost estimate. It's important to note that cost estimate was based on a national standard that was not reflective of actual prices experienced in Nashville, and that was a point of discussion, but it moved forward. TSU has reviewed the findings and moved through the next step of planning, which was taking that data and moving forward to determine what will be the priority of buildings and structures at TSU. I want to show you a map of the buildings that were surveyed. There were 28 of TSU's total 69 buildings on the main campus that were surveyed. So it's important to note there was a sample of all buildings, and that sample was considered the worst case buildings on campus. This is a unique condition from my study of TSU where every campus doesn't have the same starting point, and TSU's starting point specifically, there are a larger number of buildings that have deferred maintenance at a larger rate than other campuses in the system. But 28 of those total 69 buildings were reviewed. What was reviewed in those buildings were systems like mechanical systems, electrical, the building's thermal envelope. How well is this building maintaining heating and cooling, the efficiency? What is the structural integrity, the fire life safety systems? What was excluded was furniture. It's not about the pieces in the building, but about those fixed items that are required for education to take place. It moved on, and I want to now point your attention to this last paragraph where the facility capital plan, which is what you'll see today, and how it's based on several scenarios. There is not one way to approach it, but there are several. In the state of Tennessee, we met with both the Tennessee Board of Regents and the state architect. In meeting with Tennessee Board of Regents, we were recommended to take a per building system approach, which meant we may replace all the electrical systems or fix all electrical systems across the campus all at once. When meeting with the state architect, it was recommended that we take a per building approach, which meant we'll go into one building and fix all of this at one time, impacting that building and that academic program only once and not multiple times over the course of a year. So you will see that is the approach that we took out of the available options. I want to pause for a second and have my colleague Fabian Jolivet bring up his screen to share, because as we move into the next phase, I want to show you this is the product that came from our consultant. It organized the buildings based on facilities condition index. And that facilities condition index is a score. What you're about to see is how TSU took that information and then provided a Power BI model so that we can dynamically analyze not only the buildings and their rank, but the building systems and their rank. So I'm not just able to rank the buildings, worst to best. I'm able to rank the worst mechanical system on the entire, sampling of building. I'm able to rank the worst fire and life safety system. And so Fabian, I'll allow him to introduce himself. He will share this presentation with you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fabian Jolivet. I serve as the Assistant Director of Planning and Design here at Tennessee State University. To Will's point, TSU took the information that was provided by the consultant. We cleaned it, sanitized it, and reorganized it so that we could have a comprehensive view to determine what TSU's facilities conditions were across 28 of our educational and general buildings. I want to just go through and just show you guys some of the breadth of the project. So this table that you see before you now is the deferred maintenance table. So just for a brief overview, deferred maintenance is maintenance that has been neglected due to a lack of funding. As you see, there's 1,800 line items here. And this is the facility condition assessment for capital renewal. As you can see, there's roughly 5,500 line items here. So we took all of this information, cleaned it, sanitized it, and developed a Power BI model. So here in this table, you can see the current replacement value. This is the replacement value of what it would cost to replace these facilities today. You have the deferred maintenance cost. And for capital renewal, we looked at a 5-year period for capital renewal items. Those are items that are going to be coming due in terms of replacement. And here in this table, you see, or this column, I'm sorry, the deferred maintenance plus the 5-year capital renewal. So this is the FCI rating, which is developed by taking this combined costs and then dividing it by the capital renewal. And you can see that you get your FCI rating. Now, this is an industry standard practice to determine what the building conditions are across our campus. As you can see, we have roughly 5 replacement candidates out of that 2811 facilities that are in poor condition, and then several that are in below average condition. And we also took that data and organized it so that we can look at what are the top priorities for deferred maintenance. So here you see the fire and life safety, thermal building envelope that includes roofing, building systems such as windows, doors, etc., to make sure that the buildings are closed in well. And electrical service, mechanical and plumbing, architectural finishes, which include like carpet, walls, ceiling tile, that sort of thing, and then site work. And we can take this model out to 2033, I'm sorry, and kind of look at what the breadth of TSU's deferred maintenance is going to be currently and then in the future. And I'll let Will share his screen again.
So I want to cover this because this is a place where the typical solution. Can you hear me? I want to share this because this is a place where the most basic solution is modified and becomes a TSU specific solution. So when we took the consultant's information, we then looked at some of the factors that will affect TSU specifically. So we weighted the facilities index score. We then weighted the relevance to the critical mission of the university that each building has. What's that building's impact on the migration? And migration is the sequence of spaces and how it's utilized when buildings are under construction, who moves from Davis Hall to Clement Hall, and how valuable Clement Hall is as a space that accommodates migration, and it doesn't require us to incur costs of renting temp buildings, et cetera. And then ultimately the building longevity. So those are the 4 criteria. So then what you saw before, again, this is the way it was ranked by the consultant, which just ranks the FCI condition average down to replacement candidate. Based on the criteria, those 4 variables that we showed, this is the ranking of TSU. So we have Queen Washington, Jackson Industrial, Elliott Hall, those first 5 to 6 buildings, which is what you will now see that's critical to our strategic deferred maintenance plan. So now that we're here, I want to share that this is the summary that breaks down what has happened since January 22 and how projects have been divided and what the total impact has been. So there are 3 parts to the $250 million state strategic plan. The first is the $62.8 million of approved projects that are already under contract. Part 2 are the deferred maintenance projects that are a product of the reports and the analysis that we showed you. Part 3 are supportive projects that are deferred maintenance dependent projects. This small text is a breakdown of those numbers. So you can see it a bit more. So as you can see, the same 6 buildings that were at the top of the list based on those 4 variables are the buildings that we are focusing on. In part 1, the campus master plan update, that was funded to the tune of $500,000. Multiple building electrical upgrades is a sub-project that is related to our overall campus primary electrical upgrade project. The Ag Environmental Science Facility is an active project that is currently through the schematic design phase. Roofing at Gentry is a project that was held off until after graduation That project is underway now with the hope of being completed in the first part of February, not long after school begins. The electrical master plan, which is the primary service, and I'll share more about this later, the funding was increased in that project by $9 million last fall. And then the Davis Humanities Restoration, which is an education in general building, that was funded to the tune of $29.7 million. I'll let the rest of these numbers be an overview. I'll cover them more in detail below. Now you'll see a small blurb on each of these projects that were already approved, and they'll be noted by the tan color. I think most of you have received this information prior to now, so I won't stop there. I'll stop at the new projects. This is part two of the state strategic spend on deferred maintenance. And as you'll see, Queen Washington is critical in terms of mission as it completes the elements necessary for the health sciences quadrant of campus. The new health science building is across the parking lot from the structure. And this structure is valuable as it will house the future dental hygiene program, which will move from Clement Hall. And the budget that has been requested for that based off the deferred maintenance is $11.8 million. This is one of those structures that could very well have been raked and replaced. It was kept because of the mission criticality and the timing required to try to replace this building in the present market. I'm happy to answer questions about that, but this one is one of those we've looked at several different options, and the one that meets the mission and need of TSU most is a complete overhaul and renovation of this building based on the deferred maintenance scope. Next was Jackson Industrial. This used to be the engineering building, but this structure is critical to our aeronautics and it was one of those first 6 identified. The next is Clay Education Building. This is critical to the production and the training of teachers, those that are new teachers and those that are existing teachers who are coming back to increase their education. One of the nuances here is this is also the site that will house an increased general classroom space. So you'll note the number between its deferred maintenance and its allotted budget is slightly different, and that's based on adding additional classroom space there for general classroom use. Next is Humphreys Hall. Humphreys Hall has been a critical project as it will be the new front door of the university, and it's designed to be the co-location for emergency services, police services, as well as general services and HR functions. So part of the goal here is to prepare that building for that intended use and to cure the life safety issues that are in this building. This is critical because one of the exceeding costs we have is temp AC to replace parts that you cannot procure in a timely fashion. So the hope is to solve these issues at once and to not pay increased costs just to have a Band-Aid on the solution. Brown Daniel Library, the brutalist construction that you see here is what was popular at that time in the 70s, but it's one of those projects that we want to cure the deferred maintenance and help revive sort of the use and function of this building through these projects. Elliott Hall is one of the projects that has been identified previously as a removal, but the shift in the master plan process was to preserve Elliott Hall and to conduct the deferred maintenance that makes it an adequate solution for the art department's needs now and in the future. Part 3 now gets into the projects that are infrastructure and supportive of deferred maintenance. It's difficult to see, but I want to take the time to clarify what this project does and how it tremendously changes what TSU's power vulnerability was into its security in the future. So as you see these nodes in the blue and green connecting, that is the north loop and the south loop. Before, TSU did not have a dual feed system. Now we have a feed that comes in at the power plant on this side and a feed that will come in from NES at the southwest end of campus near the new residence hall. What this means is that if any power failure occurs on campus, it is possible for NES to feed it from the opposite direction. Over the past 5 years, the state of Tennessee funded this project in $5 million chunks. It's a $19.2 million project at the beginning that grew into a $28 million project, which is what the additional $9 million went to. The challenge is that though it creates a loop, it does not connect the buildings to the loop. So the work that you'll see presented here is how we connect the buildings to the loop. So it's effectively building a capacity, but unless we make this priority, we will not be able to utilize that capacity. So $22.3 million is the result of the engineering study by ICT and their staff that then confirmed what TSU staff had prepared last June. The next is utility tunnel metering and power upgrades. There is a network of tunnels underground at TSU. It doesn't look like this, but this is a summary or a good image of what happens underground. And those tunnels carry the steam and chilled water piping, which feeds most of the legacy buildings on campus. Right now, we are not connecting new buildings to that loop because it is at capacity and the condition of the tunnel has some safety concerns. One of the goals for most campuses with a power plant is to keep it in good repair so that it can drive efficiency, reduce energy consumption and cost. And in the future, you already know where your power and your conditioned air is coming from. Due to underfunding, TSU is not maintained that well. This is a very critical step to ensuring that the buildings that we are repairing and increasing their life, we're simultaneously increasing the system that feeds and powers those buildings. Next project is a enrollment and space analysis, which will continue the work that has began in understanding how the shift of classroom lab spaces occurred over campus, and it ends with an update to the state recorded system. The last two projects are campus migration implementation. There's a partial project that was began in 2016-17. We want to make an investment in that project to continue it and create the solutions that make it possible for construction to happen and it not to have an increased or unbearable impact upon academic programs. At present, Davis Humanities, which is slated for design completion later this year, we are in the process of developing a solution for the 23,000 square feet of classes and offices that are in that building. And this project will be helpful in providing that solution. And then lastly is the demolition and removal, which is just the fact that there are structures on campus that have lived beyond their useful life, and we have worked to maintain them, but the cost of keeping a structure that is not functional and is not intended to go into the next decade for the university. There are two buildings that we have identified that meet that criteria. One is the General Services Building and the other is Reed Hall, which are both across campus on the apartment site, and those will be removed according your approval, and the land will be prepared for future housing development that will take place there. I will stop and take questions here, and then at the conclusion, I'm happy to share any additional information that may not have been covered already.
All right, thanks, Will. Charles, do you have any questions for Will?
Who would like to go first?
Charles?
Sorry, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Deferred?
One just comment I wanted to make. When we move forward, I think as the board, it will be important if we can get some status updates with some of these reports. So for instance, like on page 11, just with the master plan, if we cannot just get the information, but an update on where we are throughout the process, I think would be helpful in understanding how the funding is looking and where the process is for SBC or who else is a part of the approval. I think that's important as we navigate through all these steps, if that makes sense for you.
It does, and there will be an update on every project that's active in the coming week from our development update. And so there will be a table that tracks what phase it's in, whether design, construction, and then what the costs are, costs incurred to date, those levels of detail.
Okay. And can I ask another question? I'm sorry. When I look at part two, the deferred maintenance piece, just looking at the Queen Washington building, so is that going to house just an academic unit now, or is it going to still house the police department, or other administrative units? I see there was a description or overview about that building, but then you also have something in there separately as well to talk about the dental hygiene piece. So what is the full use of that building?
It will be a full academic building, and it will be repurposed for that purpose. When the new health science building was completed, there were 9 or more colleges that or departments that were intended to go into that structure. It was not built adequately in size. And so several of those programs remain downtown. Part of taking advantage of Queen Washington being there is being able to accommodate more of those programs in a co-located area. And so it will be fully academic. The police will be transitioning to the front door of the campus at Humphreys as designed at present.
Okay, thank you. And then I have one more last question, just trying to get some clarity on the campus master plan. So in our May 15th meeting, it seemed that we were going to be on track for this master plan to maybe come to the board for a target of June 7th to be approved by the board. Where are we with that master plan, and are we on target with the master plan being approved?
I would answer that this way. The master plan approval will be based on what the board sees it as. From my perspective, I would recommend its approval from a short-term perspective, and that as the future comes forward with new leadership, president, then the board can determine whether it would like to have a larger long-term plan. I have had discussions on that with Trustee Tucker. I don't know if he'd like to mention his perspective on that, but it certainly is something that I like to present, and you all to have the choice to make a decision on that.
Yeah, I think, and Madam Chair can jump in and audit me here, but in terms of, there's a lot of chefs in the kitchen on this one, I guess, in terms of what the pathway is to move forward. But I think the underpinning here was to use those dollars to address deferred maintenance and the needs of the university. Now, whether you have to go through a revision of the master plan or not, I think time is not on our side on this one in terms of every year that goes by, the 250 has less impact because of the cost and the wear and tear on the facility. So I think there could be a pathway to package this together and say to whatever group that has to approve this is that, okay, these dollars are directed towards deferred maintenance. And as such, let's move forward and not have to potentially say we need to do a modification or rewrite the master plan. But you want to audit me on that one, Madam Chair?
I mean, you explained it very well. Just for clarification for everybody in the room, basically how the process has to work is when you have a master plan, that master plan has to be approved by the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, and it also has to be approved by the State Building Commission. What Chair Tucker has outlined right now is to focus solely on the deferred maintenance projects. And with that, those deferred maintenance projects still have to go through the State Building Commission for approval. So even with what we have presented before us right now, we will still have to add some additional tweaks and details so that we can get that approved through the State Building Commission. In terms of a master plan document, because a master plan document has to be thinking about prospective work. So you have to think about how many students that you will be enrolling in on a future basis. How many classes will you be offering? What types of classes will you be offering? What types of buildings will you need in order to facilitate those things? So in order for us to have a master plan, we have to be thinking about prospective. And right now, with the document that we were giving after the May 15th meeting, that document would not meet the standards of either THEC or the SBC. So the goal is to try to work in conjunction with all of those things. So thinking about prospective master planning as we move forward, and also getting these things addressed immediately, because as Chairman Tucker just so eloquently pointed out, we cannot continue to delay these projects, because otherwise the $250 million already is $100 million less than what it was supposed to be. Like, it's, those projects are going to cost now 300 plus million to address what, and we only have 250. So we've got to do something very, very quickly. And in order to get in front of the State Building Commission to have that discussion, we've got to be able to do that in a much faster way. So thank you for your leadership on that.
Any other questions?
If there's not, I'd like to show one document as we. Can you see this document? Not visible. All right, so this shows the schedule of meetings and the deadlines as it relates to the State Building Commission. So on the June 7th meeting, were something, any action that's approved on June 7th, it would take from June 7th, if it could be submitted to the Office of Facilities Development at Tennessee Board of Regents on that same day, it would take until July 11th for it to get before the SBC. So I want to share this document because it helps as we plan meetings to understand whether we're planning them with the timing of the State Building Commission process in mind or not. And that's not required. I just want to make sure that we understand what our requirements will be after approvals. So there's roughly a 2-week period here, a 1-week period here, and then another 2-week period here. So any action, it's roughly a month and a half before it gets before the State Building Commission. If there are no questions, comments, or challenges that would cause it to slow down. But that's why it's 2 weeks here, because it's a chance to work through any additional comments or questions that a state stakeholder may have, being the state architect, Tennessee Board of Regents, or legislative staffers.
Have you given any of those entities the documents that we have, or are there other documents that we would need to see in order to get you prepared to go before the SBC on, I think that was July 14th?
The action required, so I've shared the presentation, I've not shared documents. I have a concern about the order of things and it being clear that I want to start with the TSU board and being clear about its position and what it supports, and then moving through the process that was just outlined on that schedule. There are certainly conversations that go forth, but it's not a process that they are leading TSU, but that TSU is able to make a determination and then go through the process. So,
well, I only asked that question because if we say, hey, this is the way that we think we're going to do this, and then you go to the SBC and the SBC says, no, that's not going to work for us for whatever reason, I think it would be beneficial for us to ensure that there's at least some level of understanding with, I don't know who all we need to talk to with TBR or with the SBC, so that we know that we're going on the right pathway. We are here as an approving body because we're basing our approval on your expertise. And so if you don't know what direction that you should be going in, then we can't tell you where to go. So we have to have some type of level of comfort if we only do this deferred maintenance way, which I think is great to do it this way. If we're only doing that we can get the approvals that we need to get so that we can start this process.
Noted. I want to be clear.
Okay, we got it.
Before presenting this to you, we have had dialogue with TBR and the state architect. They disagreed, as I described. One said approach it per the building system. One said approach it per the building. We made a determination based on that and presented it to you. So the steps that go from here is, as it's presented to the board approves it, then we begin to work and set a schedule for those projects. They don't all happen at once. And so, as you can see from the timeline that was put up initially, there may be one project presented in July or two projects presented subsequent meetings after that until those projects that exceed the 250 million are all active, and then they are reviewed and approved in that sort of sequence. Point well taken. We do maintain dialogue. I just want to be clear, some of the too many cooks in the kitchen conversations have happened as a result of the information sequence being out of order. And so I appreciate meetings such as this that make it possible to be clear on what our objective and initiative is before it becomes a coordination.
Sure. Madam Chair, if I may add right quick, it's, and thank you for the presentation, Will. It's, and I want everyone to think about this. We are, we did what the state asked us to do, and that was to provide a document that they feel TSU has a plan to execute and move forward. And that's exactly what our what our goal was today. And Chair Winton, as you mentioned, Trustee Tucker and others, that dollar, we're losing purchasing power every single day. But we couldn't move forward on the $250 million without having the revised master plan approved by the board. And so I understand it's a lot to take in at one time. I totally get it. I feel the same way. But we wanted to provide you the information based on what was requested of us from the state to move forward. So I just want to mention that. So yes, the deferred maintenance piece is extremely important to the process, but overall, the plan is what is needed to be approved in order then to proceed. Thank you.
I think today's conversation has been helpful to give a little background at where we are and the process. But I think what we're seeing, and again, Madam Chair, you can always feel free to follow me, because your job title is a little longer than mine. But is that we think we can find a pathway, assuming that the board approves the recommendations at some point here, where we can simplify, maybe a complex word to use, but simplify the approval process to move this a little faster. But and I think this was helpful with that. And I would end it by saying there's more to come in terms of finalizing that process, but hopefully we'll have a little bit more clarity around that when we meet again in June. Is that fair?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Chapman, I saw your hand up. You're very patient. Did you have any other questions that you want to ask about this?
No, I'll wait for the update in June. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Hey, if there are any other questions for Will, we can excuse Will and we can get to the financials, which is everybody's highlight, I'm sure. So.
Thank you. Appreciate being with you.
All right. So at this phase, I'm going to turn it back over to Doug, and hopefully everybody had a chance to look at his executive summary, so we don't have to spend some time over that one, but it was to outline some of the components of it. So Doug, go ahead and take it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Again, I won't walk through the entire executive summary, but what I will do is just take an opportunity. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the budget document. All right, if everyone can see my screen. Okay. Before I jump into that for just a second, I wanted to just take a moment to explain how our process works and what drives some of our key revenues and our expenditures. Okay? Tuition and fees account for 48 0.61% of our total revenues. And again, this information is in your packet, and it's based on the board approving a 5.5% tuition and fee increase. Okay, so this is how these numbers are being derived for FY 24-25. State appropriation is 24.32% of total revenues. And I think that's important to note. The state provides about a quarter on every dollar as it relates to operations for TSU. So that gives us the opportunity to look at new revenue streams and how we become more creative on getting more revenues in the door. 22.5% is food service, bookstore, and then housing revenues. All other sources account for 4.58%. The tuition and fee I provided again in your packet to give an outlay over the last 5 years of where our in-state and out-of-state tuition, what was being charged. So and I'll start with FY 23-24, the current year, that's at $291 per credit hour. If the board approves a 5.5% increase, that will take it to $307 per hour. Out of state from $545 to $575. Now, the second chart that's in your packet, it shows tuition and fee by school and by semester. And that's given on 15 hours. That's really the state's metric in getting students in and out and graduated in 4 years. And that's what the performance funding, that's one of the metrics in the performance funding model represents. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to demonstrate that even though with a 5.5% increase, and I will say that the other institutions have also gone to the maximum end of the scale as well. So we try to stay consistent. We have trended just a little bit lower in prior years, maybe 0.5% from our sister institutions. But again, we decided to trend with them at that 5.5% mark. At the end of the day, Tennessee State University is still the most affordable public institution in this state. Okay. And I think that's very, very important to note. We have excellent faculty, staff, and folks that help make this university move forward. The third chart, housing costs by school and by semester as it relates to undergraduate for FY 23-24. Again, that outlines the housing costs. You can see that Tennessee State University is still one of the most affordable, actually the most affordable institution in this state publicly. Even with our new residence hall that went online, that's the maximum that a student will pay per semester, which is $45.62. Though some of the other institutions have older residence halls, it was still costing a little bit more to live in those versus a new residence hall at TSU when it was when the ribbon was cut and the doors were open. I'll turn your attention to the budgeted expenditures. Expenditures on the budget that you see on my screen is based on what's called natural classification. Oftentimes you look at the budget, you're going to see, well, where are personnel costs? You don't see that on the budget, but I'll take an opportunity to share with you all again where you will see salaries, benefits, etc. Again, 68% of our total E&G expenditures are related to salaries and benefits. 17% of that are for operating costs. That could be for contractual obligations. That could be for office supplies, purchasing small equipment, etc. Okay, 13% of our total E&G budget is for scholarships and fellowships. The remaining 2% are for travel related items, for faculty and staff that travel for professional development, conferences, etc. Okay. Now, the second part of our budget is where you deal with auxiliary services. That's going to be housing, food service, and the bookstore. The state doesn't provide funding for auxiliary related infrastructure. Okay, they do not do that. They look at that as these are self-supporting transactions, which should be supported again by the revenues generated from housing, the bookstore, and also food service. Okay, so for auxiliary services, 16% of the total auxiliary budget is for salaries and benefits, and the other 84% are for operating cost. Okay. Now, when you think about operating costs, you've got to think about, again, the cost that to maintain the residence halls. You also have to look at the cost that related for the purchase of food, etc. So we, as an institution, we collect the revenue from the students, and we contractually are bound contractually to then pay the vendors, such as Aramark being our food service provider. Okay, that's one of the largest ones, so I just pointed that out as an example. Okay. Now on my screen, you will see again the series of budget information, and I'm just going to walk through these line items. We're looking at the July budget 24-25. Okay. The first set of numbers there that you see are going to be what's called fund balance. Okay. So fund balance is equivalent to equity as you would see it in private industry. All right. If we go down to starting with revenues, E&G, educational and general, you'll see tuition and fees, and this is tuition and maintenance, and then the mandatory fees and some non-mandatory fees. You'll see 105 point, right at 106 million for tuition and fees. There have been conversations about enrollment kind of trending down. That is still somewhat to be determined. There are some factors that play into part of that. Again, the FAFSA has been a complicated process. The Department of Education actually has had they have shared consultants at no charge to the universities to provide the additional guidance to work through that process. And we're in the process of also packaging aid, the financial aid packages. We're about a week off schedule from doing that. You cannot package aid until a semester closes. So when that happens, there are what's called a patch that goes into our ERP system, or it could be a series of patches that load the most up-to-date financial aid information as it relates to Title IV and others. Right. So when I look at tuition and fees and building the budget, I'll look at what was our estimated budget. So I started that baseline. All right. So we had $99.2 million in the estimated budget. All right. We're proposing, again, 105, right at 106 million for tuition and maintenance. Now, as I stated earlier, we're requesting an approval for a 5.5% increase for tuition and maintenance. Now, of the 106 million, about 98.6 million of that is actually for tuition and maintenance. Maintenance is for in-state students, and of course, tuition is then classified for out-of-state students. Okay, so it's one and the same, but it has different terminology for state budgetary purposes. So again, 98.6 million would be for tuition and maintenance. Roughly 7.7 million would be for the said fees associated with the cost of their education.
Hey, Doug, quick question.
Yes.
Does when you articulate it that way, do those numbers identify the same things, or are there two different things we're getting at there?
No, so it signifies the same thing. When
Okay.
and are you, Trustee Williams, are you referring to maintenance versus tuition?
Yeah, and
Yes.
I'm trying to just understand how it folds in so that in the end of the day, the two issues come out and create the impetus for the next step of the process.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is correct. Again, it's just terminology. Uh, Tennessee is rather unique in the fact they call it maintenance. I've always seen it in my experiences. It's just mainly tuition and fees, but it's just a
Right.
terminology. So it's still one overall number. It's just how that is presented.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I will move your attention to state appropriations. The state appropriations increased just a bit. This also includes our portion of the performance funding model. In addition, the state did provide additional resources for a 3% pool for salary increases. So the state provided additional 3% for that. That's directly out of the governor's budget. So again, and that's what I was referring to about 25 cents on the dollar that we receive as it relates to state appropriations.
Mm-hmm.
And let me back up a second. Our state appropriations come in every month. Okay, so that's how those revenues are generated. I'll back up a second. Tuition and fees. Uh, we often see the largest portion of that come in September. Again, that's when, and that's done on a timeline. It's also done on a process that we have to stay consistent with the Department of Education. All right. And normally that's at the census date once students are locked in for classes because you want to ensure that they're there. And again, there's calculation that go into that particular piece as well. So we see a large portion in September, and then we see again in February. So that ties in as to how when you see the larger chunks of revenue coming through, excuse me, through the university. Again, I've just spoke on state appropriation, federal grants and contracts.
Phoebe Allen, really
Yes.
quickly with
Sure.
the appropriations piece, you touched on this a bit about our performance-based funding.
Yes, ma'am.
How much, first of all, can you just say what are our metrics under the performance-based, and how much of a difference will it make if we are hitting our targets versus not hitting our targets with our appropriations?
Sure. So, Trustee Qualls, that number is when you're thinking about the performance funding for TSU, the allotment was about 500,000, and it's not a significant portion of the budget, but there's opportunities for us to grow. I'm not the metrics expert. I more or less look at the financial impact. I do know that Provost Melton is on. She can provide more of the metrics. One of the main metrics that I'd look at is retention and then also graduation. And Trustee Qualls, this is only for our in-state students that are impacted by the performance funding model. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Partially,
Okay, please.
but I won't delay the
Oh, no,
meeting.
no delay. That's what we're here for. So go ahead. If you had a second part to that, I'll gladly answer it.
So you didn't answer the question about our performances. What are the areas?
Right. No, I did state that I'm not the metrics expert. That's more on the academic side. I was stating that Provost Melton is on the phone. She can provide the metrics piece.
So let me just help out a little.
Sure.
So the metrics include degree completion, retention, graduation rates, the progression, and how many credits you accumulate, and then the starting salaries for the job, for the students who get jobs. Those are the four main ones that they've used in the past. And they have a 5-year schedule that they use. And we're in the middle of that 5-year schedule now. So those are the main ones. It's largely degree completion, graduation, retention. So we're doing a better job on retention, but we're nowhere near what we need to be on retention.
So my question is more so the state appropriations number it doesn't change much. If we do better in some of those areas, how much will that state appropriation line change? And if I'm understanding VP Allen, he's saying it's only going to be about $500,000. So it's not a significant impact for our performance base.
So Trustee Qualls, if I may, that number that's built into the appropriations now was based on prior performance. Okay. So if we do better, then we'll get more. So I was just saying 500,000 was the number that was generated based on the past performance. So when we look in 25, 26, that number could go up. And I don't like to be pessimist and say to go down. We just pray that it goes up and we continue to do what we need to do as an institution to drive those additional dollars. Yes,
and
ma'am.
that's why Academic Affairs put together several retention initiatives to keep the students through as they progress through the system. This class the large class that we had in the fall of 2023, that class, no, 2022, I'm sorry. That class is progressing. We've been keeping tabs on it, so we want to report back how that big class was doing. And they're leading the other classes. And so the retention methods that were put in place involves just a number of things they were doing to keep the students together and to ensure that they progress from one year to the next and to accumulate the hours. So that's where we are with that.
So that class, that was a 3,600 class.
Well, I think around 3,300 once we cleaned it out.
Do you, right off top, you and Dr. Melton, do you know our retention for that class? How many are we dealing with those now?
Yes, we do. We have retention numbers of that fall 2022 class of roughly 33, 34 freshmen coming in. That excludes the transfer students. In terms of retention, in terms of those returning, and then those who had to receive academic support. 1/3 of those from fall 2022 received some type of support from our Academic Success Center to make sure that they were keeping the GPA, which is one of the metrics going in terms of retention. And I will refer over to enrollment management in terms of those that actually left the university from that group. Furthermore, in terms of
yeah, I just needed the number. What's the retention rate for that class? And then we can move on because I don't want us to get too far off of where we are in the budget.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is the retention rate academic or those who actually came back? That's what I want to make sure that I'm giving you the right information. So in terms of retention rate,
the freshman, first time freshmen, so from that freshman year until their sophomore year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, in terms of academic retention, I have those numbers. The other retention is how many did we retain that actually physically returned back to TSU from fall 2022. On the academic side, we had 1,231 that received academic support from that fall 2022 group.
Hey, I think she's asking how many of those students are still at TSU?
Okay, that's why I was asking for clarification, because
Yes,
there's,
ma'am.
yes, thank you very much, Chairperson Chapman. Yes, I'm going to refer over to enrollment management. Trustee Qualls, they would have the number of those who physically stayed with us. And I think that's what you're asking. Is Dr. Deems or COO Evans
I
on?
think COO Evans is on. I'm not sure about Jane.
Okay. Yes.
So I'm on. So I can get you that number. We normally coordinate with Dr. Anderson for the retention rate, but I can get you that number. I don't have it in front of me, but I can get you that number.
Okay, thank you.
And then Dr. Qualls, I will also have for you and the other trustees more details regarding the metrics, because it takes in not only academic affairs, but other departments. And I do have the metrics for academic affairs, and that takes in enrollment numbers, retention, graduation rates, even with a breakdown of online, on ground, in state, out of state.
All good questions. I guess so we can maybe get back to the budget. We're not going to take a vote on it, but so that the broader trustees could all understand the bigger bets that are being placed in the budget. But it also sort of signals to me is, and maybe this exists today, President Glover, and that is there a dashboard of key metrics that's provided to the board so that we can take a look across the organization and see?
It is. Thank you. It is. COO Evans puts together the list of where we are with several aspects of enrollment management. And so we'll make sure it gets into the board book and that you get in advance and that it can be available. I don't think he was aware that we were going to go over that today because it was more of the finance board, but his office, his area will put something together.
Okay, it's nice to know that exists. I think, for getting the feedback from the other trustees around the budget, on the big move, I call them the big rocks, like the assumptions around enrollment and a few other things. I'm sure we got some questions about that. So, hey, Doug, if you're okay, can we just open it up? I think you covered most of the big items in the budget, but I'm sure that the trustees, and Ms. Chapman has raised her hand, Trustee Chapman, so we'll go to her first, and then any other questions that the Finance Committee will have as well. So go ahead, Trustee Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman Tucker. Just a couple of questions for clarity. I noticed that what you provided for us is a summary, which is great. Do you have the further breakdown, line by line, of the budget? So we can see line item by line item versus the summary. That's number one. And number two, I'm very interested to see the actual balance sheet that helped to derive this budget, something that is given an outline of, your income, liabilities, just your basic balance sheet, the financials that help to build out the budget.
Sure. So, Trustee
Let
Chapman.
me ask you a question, Doug, quick. How many pages is the budget? Is it about 350, 400 pages?
It's about 300 pages, line by line. So this process, again, it's technically a year-round process for the budget. Okay, and I provide the summary, Trustee Chapman, just to give the overview, right? But there's support for every number. That's why I wanted to provide also just the highlights as far as percentages and what really makes up our budget. So 68% of our budget is salaries and benefits, right? Benefits account for about 35 cents on the dollar. Okay. But yes, I can provide you line by line item detail. But what you're ultimately gonna see again are salary benefits, and then those other operating costs.
Yeah, and I will say that the fact that it's a couple hundred pages is fine.
No, I'm okay with
Because
that. Absolutely.
we would most rather see what you're asking us to approve in full detail and disclosure versus the summary. And also, again, the actual financials. I went out to the website, and I believe the last financials that I see for the institution was through the year 2022.
That would be correct. That would
Audited.
be correct because those are our audited financials that go out there. They're just now starting the FY23 audit, so we won't see that for a couple more months. Okay.
Okay.
You were asking about so the balance sheet is not used to derive the budget. The budget is based on revenues and expenses.
Right. And let me be more clear.
Sure.
I've never seen budget without accompanying the financial. So you can see what is the financial stability of the institution
Sure.
versus what you're trying to drive out in terms of what you should charge and all of that. So I think that as we continue the discussion, we need to see both.
So let me. I think I can help you right quick on that. Okay. And so our financial statements, the audited financial statements, you'll see those on the website. I'm happy to pull those down and provide those to you all directly. But let me turn your attention to the screen for a second. If you see here in this first column here, this is what you're asking about actuals, right?
No, I'm not. I'm actually asking about actual cash on hand.
Okay.
Actually asking about detailed around investments to see the actual cash flow of what's coming into the institution. So your liabilities, again, your assets, all of the things that are on a balance
Balance sheet is what you're asking.
sheet.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking for.
And just to support the question that's been offered by Trustee Chapman is the same question I asked. We are missing the balance sheet, and that should be part of the next update that we give. And I think that's a reasonable request because
absolutely
it shows your cash and receivables, and you get a better view of what impact that is on the business, or in this case, Tennessee State. So the balance sheet, I think, is important. We should add that, and we should put in the portable more detail on the items to request that's been made as well.
Absolutely. And just to help to further underscore, I understand what's out in terms of what's been audited, but I know that the institution itself and the work that you're leading, Mr. Allen, you have a balance sheet.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
have internal.
Yeah.
And that's what we're just, asking to be able to review so that we can have the best educated decision-making around how to support approving your budget before we go into the next session. It'd be very helpful to have full financial presentation.
Agreed.
So the bottom line is that it's not that we don't have the process and the structure. It may not be in the type of form that we have. That may look a little bit different. And the question then, I believe, from Chairwoman Chapman is just show us what the data is telling us.
No problem. And again, this is a different request. I have no problem sharing that information at all.
Yeah.
Yep, you got it.
And I appreciate we appreciate the summary and, given the high level, but considering a lot of the information that we've shared with today, or that we've learned today, and in partnership with all of the great things that you guys are helping to lead and helping to recover, we got to see it all. We can't prove without seeing it all.
Disagree. And again, part of that too is just making, asking you, or I'll provide the information. It's totally transparent. I have no issue with that. I was saying it wasn't standard to issue the balance sheet with it because it doesn't play into the budget. But for full disclosure, absolutely, I'll provide that to you. No problem at all.
And not to belabor the point, I would disagree. Financials help to write a budget. If you're wanting to advocate for a tuition increase, the financials will help to know why.
Yep. No, very reasonable request. We're all aligned. Hey, I think, Doug, what some of the trustees and the rest of us are saying, in order to feel comfortable approving the budget, we just need to understand a little bit more about the line items and better understand the health of the university.
Absolutely.
I'll help you with that. And I think what the purpose of today's meeting was to understand what additional information trustees would want to see in order to feel comfortable when we meet in June to approve the budget. So I think all of these things we should put together and send it out to everybody. I'm going to go to Chair Whitman, who has her hair raised.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions. One, in regards to, you had made a statement about the FAFSA, they have some consultants available. Are we utilizing any of those consultants? And are they on campus? And what has that process been like?
So yes, they understood the complexities behind it. So they actually provided folks, and I can't remember what day they actually come to campus, but they are providing remote access and guidance through the process as well. And again, this was the actual Department of Education, their staff offering this. So these are the folks that write the new FAFSA requirements, so they understand it best. But they were having so many issues. Other institutions were that they said, "Look, we got to step in now and help the institutions out, or this process will drag out forever and a day." So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm just going to make a request.
Sure.
I cannot underscore and stress this enough. We are asking you all for information because we want to make sure that we are addressing the full picture of things. We are a new board, so I know probably some things that you were not accustomed to doing before with the previous board, because so many of them have been there and they had so much more institutional knowledge than what we have. So when we are asking for information, we do need that information in the full context and also in a timely manner. So with this past meeting, we received information late Friday evening on a holiday weekend. That's not fair to us. So it is critically important for when we are expecting to receive information that we have the time to review it. Thank you.
Fair enough.
In fairness to the university on this one, I'd have to take the hit for the 2 or 3 day delay on getting it out, because I just wanted to make sure that the information was meeting the minimum expectation for this meeting. So I don't think I'm gonna be the hold up going forward to ensure that we get it out more effectively. So, but I'd have to take responsibility for the 2 or 3 day delay I'm getting now this time around. It was my first pass going through it too.
So okay. I do have, thank you, Trustee Tucker. I do have that documented, noted for the additional information that's being requested. Not a problem.
And Chairman Tucker, in defense of you, I think what we're asking for is something that, from my vantage point, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, this would have been something that would have already been done that would not have caused the delay to begin with. So I don't want you to feel like you have to take heat to ask for financials, to ask for where we are in terms of preparing for budget for something that's due for approval in the next couple of weeks or what have you. From our vantage point, again, I would say from mine, that this would have been something that would have already been ready, that you would have been able to ask for at the drop of a dime. So, but in all fairness, I do understand that everyone is in the midst of audit and graduation. There are 1,000 things that are going on all at one time. And what my hope is that the school understands is that we're here to be of support, but also in complete transparency. We want full transparency from you so that we know how to support you as your board. And it's my hope that as we continue this walk together, that you find trust in us, that we're here to help and be a part of the guidance of the university ultimately. And that this is not a condemnation by any means. This is just, again, a request to open up and let us see so that we will know how to support further.
And I do appreciate that. I don't take it that way at all. Again, it's a new board, and we're moving forward. Period. And again, this is part of the reason why we're having this meeting today is to get a better understanding of, what you all are looking for, expectations, etc. And I'll happily oblige to that.
Yeah, and I think solely on the financials alone, we were at a little better place here in terms of having that information sooner. I think what made this a little bit more complex the first time out of the box was drilling down a little bit deeper on the deferred maintenance. And more importantly, I think right ahead of the budget was, did we have a credible plan of understanding what's required to get the additional funding that's outstanding? So typically, and it's my desire going forward that we don't have all of those at the same time, trying to put together the information and sending it out. So we'll catch up to take place, but I think all the feedback is why we're here.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Any other questions from trustees or members of the finance committee? I skipped you, I'm sorry. Actually, we're doing better. I had a bet that we wouldn't get to this at all with the other two items, so we're doing pretty good to be at 6:30. But on the finance committee, let's go back. Are there any items that need to be added with additional information prior to the June meeting? You get comfortable with understanding the budget?
Absolutely.
Anybody on the anybody else got any suggestions?
No, my main concern
Was addressed by Trustee Chapman's comments and questions.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Kevin or any other trustees, any more additional information around the budget that you need to see or review prior to a June meeting?
From my perspective, I think we've done a fair job at being consistent at trying to make sure everybody has the same information and getting to the material. And the better off we can do this, the better off that we're going to operate as a board. So I applaud the team for hanging in and really kind of putting your thoughts to it, because at the end of the day, we have to create an expectation of how we're going to operate going forward. And that's critically important. So thanks everybody for the support that you've done here today.
Okay, are there any other suggestions in terms of additional information around the financials to get comfortable with a review prior to a meeting? If not, I'm going to go to my last page.
Well, just one thing for me, I'm sorry. If we can get just an additional breakdown on the tuition and fees before we have our meeting next week, I think that will be helpful for us too.
Yeah, I think we prepared, Doug, I know we talked about going back 5 years, but longer in terms of showing those increases year over year. What did we come up with that?
Right. So as you see here on the screen,
We don't have to have it today. I'm just saying if there's some additional documentation of what you use to go into how you got there, that will be helpful before we have the meeting next week.
Sure, Madam Chair, and I will, that is noted. That's not a problem.
Yeah, the comparative analysis and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other requests? If there's no additional business, I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Motion's been moved in second.
Wait, who seconded that?
Well,
Kevin
yeah, Kevin can't second it. I'll second it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm the youngest of 12. I've always had that problem.
Okay. Secretary Pendleton, please call the roll.
Trustee Tucker,
Yes.
trustee Norfleet,
Yes.
trustee Torber,
Yes.
and 3 yeses.
All right, the motion is approved. We're all adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for your time today. I know it was a extended meeting. We look forward to getting back together and following up on some of the to-dos that were committed to today. So appreciate it.